Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Taxation-based turmoil! I'm gonna get into this more later, but this is something that's a bit overblown, claiming that one of the things the prequels are about is taxes and trade routes. The problem is this really should not have been the first lines of the opening crawl. The opening crawl is to establish the current situation in as simple a manner as possible. The second paragraph establishes that the Trade Federation is greedy and has set up a blockade to stop shipping to Naboo. That is more relevant information and more interesting than taxing trade routes. I think you can keep the same information in the crawl, but reorder it. Start off with, the greedy Trade Federation is blockading the peaceful planet of Naboo for unknown reasons. Some say it's over tax disputes, while others suspect more sinister motivations. It sounds more mysterious, yet conveys the same exposition. This is another thing I'm going to be doing throughout these reviews. I think the prequels have the foundations to be good movies, but they zig where they should have zagged, and I'm going to try to explain how I think they would have worked better. Because I'm an egotistical blowhard who thinks he knows better. Anakin brings R2 and Padme back to his room to show off the droid he's building. C-3PO. I don't understand the logic of this. When did Lucas decide, yeah, Darth Vader built C-3PO, that makes sense? How is this an improvement? At best, it's fanficky, but most fanfics at least have some sort of reason to have these kind of goofy, illogical connections. Like, does this say something about 3PO's character? Or Anakin's? I'd say Anthony Daniels was just under contract to appear and he couldn't think of any other way of including 3PO in the story, but even I can come up with a few. He's a protocol droid. He could be in Amidala's court too. Or maybe he's helping out the Queen at the Senate or something. There are so many other ways they could have done it, but nope. Anakin built C-3PO for some reason. Later, Qui-Gon talks to Shmi about Anakin. He has special powers. He can see things before they happen. It is a Jedi trait. The Force is unusually strong with him. So let me postulate a different way this could have played out that would have filled that plot hole about Qui-Gon selling the ship and getting a smaller one or whatever. Picture this. Qui-Gon fails to exchange his Republic credits with Watto, but then he spots Anakin working in the yard. All of a sudden, a wall of junk behind Anakin is about to fall on him, but Qui-Gon sees Anakin not only anticipate this, but use the Force to push it back, purely on instinct. Anakin is clearly exhausted and overtaxed by this ordeal, but even at this young age, he's powerful with the Force, and, as Qui-Gon says, he can anticipate things before they happen. If he tries to bargain for another ship or hire another ship, that means he gets away from Anakin, who he wants to take back to the Jedi. And thus, that becomes his character goal for this sequence and easily fixes the plot hole. It helps show why he's going to ridiculous lengths for a ludicrous plan. He knows he can get Anakin out of this too and doesn't want to risk coming back for him later. It also gives us a chance to actually see Anakin being strong with the Force like Qui-Gon suggests he is. We only know it because he says it, and let's face it, Qui-Gon has not exactly wowed us so far as such a great and noble Jedi. Credits will do fine indeed. Who was the father? There was no father. I can't explain what happened. Nothing weird about that, just space Jesus down in here. This episode is going to be long enough as it is, so we'll get into the virgin birth thing when we get to Revenge of the Sith, but needless to say, it's just a dumb, unnecessary idea. The fact that Qui-Gon even asks bugs me. It's clearly meant as a way to try to establish if there was some Force user in his lineage, because that gets passed down. It's the divine right of kings bullcrap, implying he's special because of who his dad was. One of the things that a lot of people who hate the Phantom Menace will say is that even if they dislike the rest of the movie, that they still like the pod racing. This was common even when the movie was fresh. People loved the pod race scene. And I have to be contrarian because I do not. I'd be okay with it except for the fact that it is way, way too long. If we go by when Anakin actually gets going to when he wins the race, it's 9 minutes. Longer if we include the surrounding bits. I have had episodes of this show shorter than the pod race scene, and I'm a colossal windbag in case you hadn't noticed by how long this episode is. It just goes on and on and on, and you only get music near the end. A race like this is supposed to be fast, intense, and exciting, but it just lasts so long it starts getting boring. You know, the original Death Star trench run in A New Hope actually had 3 attempts to shoot the torpedo into the exhaust port to help emphasize how desperate a plan this was. They cut it down to 2 trench runs because the pacing was awful. If they just cut the pod race in half, a good 5-minute sequence, I'd be fine. But 9 to 10 minutes? It's too much. The comic at least understands this, cuts it down to about 3 or 4 pages. Admittedly, that's probably a bit shorter than it needs to be, but it hits the highlights and keeps the excitement. Boom, done. And yeah, Anakin wins. We have another good scene, this time to set up things between Anakin and Padme. Anakin is cold, not used to an environment that isn't a desert. Since Anakin's not sure if he'll ever see Padme again, he gives her a little necklace he carved for her. What does not work about this scene is that it's supposed to be helping set up the future romance between these characters. As the Weird Al parody pointed out, the age gap is iffy. From what I've heard, Lucas decided that Anakin should be this young because it was the age where the separation from his mother would impact him the most. If he was much older, it supposedly wouldn't affect him as much to be separated from her. I get the reasoning, but I personally disagree with this, especially if, say, he knew she was still a slave. Even as a teenager, he should be close enough to her given their situation that all this would bother him. It also really confused me when I was a kid when later on they say Anakin is too old to begin the Jedi training. And I'm just baffled. Sure, we see pretty young kids in Jedi training, but honestly it feels even more unbelievable that 3 to 6-year-olds have the discipline for this stuff. Teenager? I can buy that as too old. This is nothing. You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy? This prophecy, which of course we never learn any details about, could have been extraordinarily useful in the later movies, but they don't use it, and that kind of annoys me. We'll save that for one of the other episodes, though. Instead, let's talk about another idea for how they could have done Anakin. As mentioned, there's that huge plot hole about not just selling their ship and getting another one, or booking passage on another ship. How about they go that route? But on board this smuggler's ship or whatever, make him a teenage stock boy or assistant. That way the age gap isn't as extreme. We see him as a cocky young kid with all this power. To supplement the pod race, you could have him be in a dangerous situation, either being pursued or chasing through an asteroid field or something, and he has to take the controls and pilot them to safety. That shows off that the kid has piloting skills as per Obi-Wan's "he was the best star pilot in the galaxy" and all that, instead of what we get later. Outside the council chambers, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan discuss Anakin. Obi-Wan doesn't think Anakin will pass the council's test. "Do not defy the council, master, not again." "I will do what I must, Obi-Wan." "If you would just follow the code, you'd be on the council. They will not go along with you this time." Okay, and this dialogue right here is pretty much the indication of why Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan don't work in this story. We are told that Qui-Gon has this tendency to defy the Jedi Council, act independently of them, doing things the Council would not approve of. That's a perfectly fine idea. Show that his decision to train Anakin is because of his own arrogance and independence. And he is arrogant. I joke with the Qui-Gon is wrong counter, but he does keep reiterating to Padme on Tatooine, "I know what I'm doing, just shut up and do what I say." That would actually fit more in with Qui-Gon's less than moral attitude of attempted theft and mind control, but that attitude is never called out, and Liam Neeson's performance is not as a reckless, arrogant, morally questionable figure, but as a wise, stoic, seasoned master. It feels like him and Obi-Wan should be reversed. Obi-Wan questions Qui-Gon all the time and is the one concerned about the Council's approval, as if he was Qui-Gon's little brother worried about their parents finding out about something bad they did. And indeed, they changed the characterization of Obi-Wan in the later prequels so that he's more ready to fly off the handle and clearly not ready to train someone. So it seems like they took that lesson to heart, but it doesn't fix the fact that in this movie, the two are written so badly. Over to Jar Jar and Amidala, they talk about their worries for what'll happen to the Gungans. This scene right here is what we needed more of from Jar Jar. He's more dignified, he's more serious. Sure, his weird way of speaking undermines it a bit, but he actually makes an interesting point. "Gungans no die without a fight. We's a warriors. We's got a grand army. That why you no liking us, methinks." It's a subtler bit that I don't think anyone ever caught on to. The Naboo apparently don't have a standing army of their own. Is their conflict based around fear that the Gungans will be the aggressors in a war? It'd be interesting if this was explored more, but instead it seems to be more of an epiphany moment for Amidala, that she has to actually fight back and not hope for more peaceful means of settling this conflict. Though if it is, it's really underplayed. And again, it's a moment with Jar Jar where he's not being an embarrassment. This is what we needed more of in the movie. Less straight-up comic relief, maybe even more moments of insight. Padme humbles herself before Boss Nass, having everyone bow to him and making it clear they need his help and will do what they need to secure it. This is, sadly, another missed opportunity for Jar Jar as a character. We could have had him be the bridge between the two cultures. Maybe have him reveal Padme as the true queen. Like, he had some insight or was a skilled observer who figured it out before anyone else did. But no, instead we just have Boss Nass declaring Jar Jar to be a general of their forces while claiming that he brought them together. This is also in spite of the fact that Jar Jar was exiled for being clumsy, and you want to give him command over troops? Again, this could have been an arc for Jar Jar. Maybe he's clumsy and slapsticky to start off with, but then he sees his own people getting killed and tortured, and he takes a level in badass, or he's some savant in military strategy, but never had the opportunity until now to show it off. Back on the droid control ship, Anakin manages to shoot torpedoes out into the ship, apparently reaching the reactor. This is another bit that's criticized about the film, this child taking out the entire droid control ship on his own. Honestly, the idea of young Anakin destroying it could have worked, but having him be excited and happy and saying things like, "I'll try spinning, that's a good trick," it's bad. I wouldn't even say it's childish. It's just not how humans say things. You want to actually make me invested in this scene? Make him panicked. This is a child in the middle of a space battle. Show him looking all around him and just barely surviving, getting some lucky shots off. Keep his dialogue to a minimum beyond, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And then when he wins the day and lands, you have someone come up to him and tell him, "Anakin, that was amazing! You're the chosen one!" And suddenly there's this gleam in his eye, this slow smile across his face as those words etch into his memory that he is the chosen one and can do no wrong. Or, just have him yell, "Now this is pod racing! Whoopee!"